G'day everybody, Duckville here on the 4th of November. It's a lovely sunny day here in Melbourne. It's actually a public holiday, so most people have the day off, and I decided I would cast this game I was given. It is apparently a pretty damn awesome TVP that we've got here on the wonderful, yet also, I don't know, I suppose it sort of differs between people whether they use the word wonderful. Yonzu LE, of course, one of the newer ladder maps with the dual sight kind of setup in terms of the terrain. Anyway, let's have a look at our players before we get too far into talking about wonderful aesthetics of the map. Up at the top right hand side here, we've seen him in a couple of replays that I have casted before. One of them just previously. He was the Ghost King, basically, in another long-term kind of game on this map. It is Frenetic ARze's Hut. And his opponent, down at the bottom left-hand side, one of the very high-level Protoss players that we have here in the C scene. He's basically, as I'm sure everyone knows, we have you know a lot of really good Zerg players. We've got Pig and Moonblade, and then a whole bunch of other Zerg players that are also down here in Australia and C. But we have very few Protoss players, and now that Team Immunity's Light has retired from the scene, this guy here from Silicon Sports, ARze, is one of the very big sort of local players. He's reached GM over on the NA server. This is actually taking place on the NA server, by the way, and it does quite well on the Korean server, from what I understand, as well. Is quite up there on that particular region as well. And yeah, he's just a really solid Protoss player that we have. So it's really good. Like, for me personally, to be able to cast someone locally. In fact, I'll be quite honest, to be casting like a ladder game in particular between two seed players who have happened to have met, and neither of them is Zerg, is pretty cool for me. But yeah, it's these two guys are pretty damn good. Of course, Hut, well known for some, I suppose, shenaniganery back in the day of Wings of Liberty with 11-11 kind of stuff every now and then up against the Zerg players. But here in Heart of the Swarm, he's really kicked it up, especially in late game of this particular matchup, TVP. He's one of the few players who I've seen some replays and seen some casts of him, some other dudes casting various C tournaments that Hut has been in, and he's one of the few Terran players who will actually say, you know what, I'm just going to make a shitload of ghosts. We're going to have, like, 15, 20 or more ghosts, and it's actually can be really difficult to deal with in the late game stage of TVP. So we'll see what he's going to do this time here. Of course, ARze, not one to be trifled with himself, is a very high-level Protoss player who has risen up quite recently, as I mentioned, and has some really solid macro late game play. This guy is, wow, that was the sneakiest probe, trying to get away from the Reaper by diving inside the assimilator, but Hut on the ball was able to snipe him out as he returned back home. But as I said, ARze has been really putting in some great performances in some various Australian tournaments that he's been in, and yeah, has really good macro. You don't want to go past like 35 minutes with this dude, because he will find a way to kill you, whether it be through slow sort of methodical play that I see quite a lot in his PvZ, where it's just kind of making sure he's got the right counters, got various wall offs and things like that all set up and ready to go, and just slowly killing off Zerg players, or whether it's in PvT, playing really solid kind of style here. He is an absolute beast when it comes to late game. So we'll see what these guys are going to do here. Of course, given that they are both very adept late game players here. It looks like we've got 3 racks now up for Hut. Of course, very standard kind of play here from him. We get a few Marines and a couple of Marauders out as well. What I normally do see from Hut, he does like to utilize the very early push out here. You get, what is it, around about sort of 8 Marines, and I think, and about 2 Marauders, and you just kind of push and force out the Photon Overcharge on the Natural Nexus. It's something which many Terran players do utilize. Of course, you never want to let a Mothership core get up to 100 energy, because that will basically just bounce between these two particular bases. If you were a Terran player and you wanted to come in and drop down the backside, you would need to, you'd have to make sure that he couldn't Photon Overcharge this, because especially on this map on Yonzu, there's very small sort of areas that aren't actually hittable by a Photon Overcharge in the main. So if you are gonna go in for drops or something like that, you have to be very careful and make sure that a mothership core does not have its full 200 energy. So this is partly what this particular drop is all about here. Reaper's going to dive inside the back and wants to just try and distract one of these Stalkers here. We'll pull the Stalker back, but at the front, as we can see, this Observer was able to scout out that that push was coming through. So a nice activation of the Mothership Core's Photon Overcharge there will force Hut back for the time being. And we'll see where he's going to go with this because, you know, as we said, he's got very strong, as you sort of move into mid and late, he becomes a bit of a macro beast in a way, like in terms of production capabilities. I've seen just his macro is really, really good, and you know, I'm really intrigued to see where he's going to go. So standard sort of games in PvT these days do generally revolve around the Protoss player being the one to make the particular move of, you know, what kind of tech they're going to go for. So for ARze, as we can see here, he's going to go up with a very kind of, you know, a very basic sort of setup here. A couple of gates, Forge, Robo, and then the Robo Bay are also going up, and he's just made a bit of a sad face there. I think he just lost another observer just in the middle of the map there. Hut very diligent with his picking up of those observers. So it does look like we will have Colossus play coming up from ARze. He's got his +1 on armor now just coming up as well. Only a couple of Zealots, a couple of Stalkers, and in fact it's 2 of each just here for ARze to defend. He's just going to add in an extra Stalker as well. Mothership Core just precariously positioned here, wants to be in the right spot, of course, to defend against these kinds of pushes that can come in. Hut just testing the waters, says, have you got that Photon Overcharge? It looks like the answer is no. So what I'm going to do is, now that I've also got Stim, is I can come through, try and push up against some of these units. However, ARze, with a couple of really good force fields, segment some of the units, will cut most of them down with the Zealots that were at the front, and the Stalkers should be enough to threaten the rest of what is there. And oh wow, another Observer just almost went down there again. In fact, maybe there was one that was in the range, and then this second one was barely unsniped. But Hut is now going to move up to very normal kind of bio play here with the +1 to weapons all the way, combat shields, and a couple of medevacs now just coming through as well as he takes his third base. He's feeling very comfortable. This kind of play, this very sort of very aggressive sort of posturing out the front of the Protoss base means that they have to have a Colossus out or some kind of AoE damage before they can even consider taking, that's a new word I just made up, before they can even consider taking a third base, because you just can't really, you know, march down the rocks here, or take down the rocks and march down to this third base, set up your Nexus, and then also be okay to defend attacks coming in from these kind of directions. So this is a kind of, this is why we do see this kind of play coming out from Hut, just really locking down his opponent to make sure that he cannot get too far without investing in some AoE tech here. And as we can see, that first Colossus is now going to come through. Hut trying to micro him down a little bit. I think he was being a little bit cute there, just trying to dance about, and it was just like, okay, there's a few Colossi, there's a Colossi and some Zealots there. Probably not the best idea, but he does lose a couple of Marines, not too much to worry about. The resources lost just kind of favoring Hut at the time being, just because he only has he's only lost a few of those basic kind of Marines, whereas ARze has lost I believe a couple of Stalkers and then also a few Zealots as well. So this game is proceeding at a very sort of stock standard kind of pace for a PvT, where you've got the Protoss now moving up to Colossus tech. Extended Thermal Lance is done, +1 to weapons is done, as we can see with the 6 gates now up and running. ARze is going to be able to push out and start to take his third base. Of course, with this third Nexus comes, it's a bit of a signal of many things for a Terran player. Number one, obviously you're not getting 2 base, which is pretty cool to have the knowledge about. The other thing is that you know, you need to prepare, right? So by the time this gets activated, he's going to be able to get charge. He's going to be able to get blink, possibly. There will be at least 2 or 3 Colossus. You have to be prepared for this kind of thing. So very wisely, Hut has now jumped up to a couple of Vikings here. We've got 4 of those already out. We've got a couple more on the way. So this is a kind of point where, as a Terran player, you're considering, well, should I grab another starport? Do I need the extra production capability for those air units? Generally, the answer that I like to see for that is a yes. Like, you don't necessarily have all the production until this third base has its gas, and you have that extra gas for medevacs and Vikings and that kind of thing. But I think it is good to prepare for that kind of situation. So As you can see, Hut is going to finish up his +1 on the armor there. Second eBay just about to finish up. The armory is just a tiny bit behind here, but he is going to now push in for a possible attack on the third base. Now, this is a very awkward sort of situation here for ARze. He has to be very careful with those Colossus. If he loses those before he can take down a lot of those Bio Forces, then he could be in a lot of trouble. But he is going to target down the Vikings. Looks like the Vikings will fall before the last Colossus does. Hut is dancing around, trying to make the most of what he can here. Stimming in, diving forward, taking out the Colossus, and now he's going to load up and try and get out of there, but a very dangerous move because Blink was just moments away here for ARze. He could have blinked forward and sniped down those, but Hunt, playing the risky game there, did load up and got out of there very quickly, and that just sort of, you know, it sort of sets his opponent back. It means that ARze is not going to be up at a high total of Colossus there, like, you know, if it moves anywhere up to like a 4 or 5 mark, you can be in a bit of trouble, because, I mean, that's the point, where your basic, your Bio Forces on the ground, the Marines and the Marauders, are not going to be doing too much, so long as the perk does controls correctly, and this is why we see Hut just stimming forwards yet again. He's going to scan forwards and say, alright, there's still only one Colossus. There's not, it's not a huge amount to be worried about, because the Marauders do that, a very high damage against the armored targets, 22, of course, per shot, and once that +2 to weapons kicks in, it'll be even more. But Hunt playing this out very, very patiently, and I really like the way he's just sort of keeping control of the map here. He was, earlier on, we did see him sniping out a lot of the observers, so he was being very, very cautious about that kind of thing, but now it looks like we are going to get a big load up of units here. There are 5 medevacs that are now looking to dive inside the main base. The Stalkers well prepared for this. They will not forward blink at all. There was a High Templar there as well, which was prepared for that kind of situation, so it looks as if Hut's number was read like a book there, I guess, from ARze's perspective. So he is able to stop that from becoming a reality for the time being. Hut, meanwhile, now up to a total of a massive amount of how many have we got? 8 racks in total. We'll probably see that kick up probably a little bit more as this third base is now fully mining here. We can see that. I love these. I love these bunkers at the back. You do get to see these most of the time when high-level Terran players are in, or they're on their sort of, you know, they're on the ball. But this kind of thing is really, really useful. You never underestimate that kind of thing. If you're a newer Terran player, you want to set up some kind of protection at your third base, chuck a bunker in the back, put a turret next to it to minimize the surface area that is available to attack just over here as well. If it's sort of positioned behind all of these minerals as well, then that means the actual surface area to attack in, if a drop of Zealots was to come in, is very, very minimal. So it's actually a really, really cool idea. I love when people were doing that. It sort of, it really came of age when people started, when Hellbat drops were the big thing in TvT. You would often see that kind of bunker in TvT with a couple of Marines and a Marauder or something to that effect in there to protect against those dropped Hellbats, but it is a very, very powerful tool in this particular matchup as well. But as we can see, ARze is now just about to max out here. Got quite a few Templar all prepared and ready to rumble. We've got a few Colossus here. They do have +2 on their armor, but their weapons upgrade is still coming along, just a moment away until we do get to see that. But ARze is now looking to set up his 4th base. So once this gets up and running, this is when a Protoss late game really starts to kick in. When you're able to run around with some Warp Prisms, get some drops going into possible outer bases like this, a lot of the time, especially on Yonsu, you'll see a Warp Prism come in here, drop down some Zealots and sort of attack into this base very quickly. You can also see it coming in from the back end as well, and also across to that third base there as well. So these are, you know, this is a point where as a Terran player you start to get a little bit worried about what's going on. Okay, where is he? Here we are. Hut can see that ARze is now pushing through the middle of the map, but we do have a Warp Prism just across the right hand side, looking a little bit cheeky, but as we can see, Hut is very, very well prepared for this. Quite a number of turrets here ready for that kind of ingress of the Warp Prism, so he'll be able to stop that easy peasy. A Warp Prism will just get decimated by two turrets, let alone like a whole grid of them there. So ARze is going to have a lot of trouble pushing into the main base here, and that's obviously one of your big objectives as a Protoss player here. Is what I want to do is get some DTs, we want to get some DTs and Zealots in here, cut across and try and take down a lot of that production capability, not to mention intercept any units that are now rallying out of all of those Raxes, just because that means that is a lot less on the field there. And wow, ARze getting caught out straight away, but what is the second Warp Prism doing? Alright, I don't know what that second one's doing. But as I was saying, you do want to kind of cut out these reinforcements from coming along, because that means your force out on the field starts to multiply quite a lot, because with no backup ghosts now coming along and those sorts of things, that's when a Terran player really starts to struggle here, and that is a really big boon in the late game of PvT. But now Hut has picked up a lot of Vikings. He's got the correct, really nice amount here, just 9 Vikings. He said, alright, well, you've only got 3 Colossus. We've got a lot of Zealots on the ground. How are we going to deal with this particular mixture? We want to have a relatively sort of simple count of Vikings. I don't want to say a low count, because 9's not exactly low, but it's not a huge amount either. And it can be... Ooh, as we see a blink forward from those Stalkers, it looks as if they were actually a little bit out of position. One EMP does get off and removes the shields on quite a lot of these forces. Snipes coming forward from Hut. As we said, a very well-versed Ghost user here is Hut, and he is going to move forward, taking out quite a lot of those units. A few of the Ghosts have been brought down a little bit. ARze now blinking forward, the EMP is dropping down. There are virtually no storms available here for ARze. It looks like with the Colossus going down as well, the Zealots are just going to be fodder for nothing. What these Zealots are for is for tanking while you get the Colossus and the Templar into position. But with no Templar and no Colossi ready to roll there, that meant that Hut really took a good position in this in that particular battle there. So he's going to move forwards. It looks like he does want to check out if there's a possibility of a 5th base here for ARze, but he can see that it looks like none of the sort is going to be going on. Just sort of scanning forward, wants to find out where all the Templar and defensive forces are. A few Marauders will be picked up by a storm, but not before killing off one of the Templar there. And, well, I'm kind of surprised that that Hut is not pushing forwards. He did lose quite a large sort of amount of his bio forces there, but I kind of feel like he could at least look to threaten some of these bases. But the problem with this map that you can start to encounter in the late game, you push up in this direction, a Protoss is going to come in from here and block you off and just sort of trap you in, which can be a really huge hassle, because if you lose too many of your forces, then it starts to swing the other way. So Hut, he did back off for now. I suppose, yeah, actually in the long run, it is a little bit of a smarter decision. Pick up a 5th base, set up the defenses here, get some sensor towers rolling as well. Look at the vision that Hut has at this point. He's got sensor towers, 2 sensor towers, basically covering this entire section of the map, along with the fact that he's got a multitude of scans available with extra orbital commands that have now finished up as well. He's got all that production back at home with a total of 11 racks up and running. We've got 3 starports available to get medevacs, Vikings, and possibly even looking to switch to battle cruisers later on if he does decide to go in that direction. But the main thing that he has here is this really nice mixture, and as long as he keeps good control of these Ghosts, he should be able to really compete in these battles. But ARze, well, he's not down and out just yet either. He's sitting on +2 armor, +3 weapons, which means these Colossi are extremely deadly, and it looks like we will get another engagement. The Ghost now moving forwards, getting slaughtered at the front line there. Looks like the cloak was a little bit late, unfortunately, for Hut, and however, this does mean that the Archons and Zealots are now moving forwards. Hut losing quite a lot of his forces there, but so is ARze, losing almost all of his Colossi. Only 1 left. The Templar now coming through. Archons slowly working their cotton ball bodies forward, and it looks like they will be able to snipe down quite a lot of the units here. Hut decides to back out, and the 5th base will be his sanctuary for now, but not before he loses quite a few of those Ghosts. That really hurts here, and we'll see if that comes back to bite Hut a little bit later on, because as we mentioned before, his Ghost count is one of the really big things that we notice about when he plays. And as you can see, some Zealots are now going to make their way back towards the 3rd base. Another small pack is pushing in towards the 4th as well. All the while, more attacks coming across from ARze. He's moving forwards to try and threaten the 5th base, but that is not going to happen. And look at this. This is exactly what I'm talking about. We did lose quite a few of those of the SCVs that were there at the 4th base as well, but ARze is he's getting quite a bit of damage done, but not before losing quite a lot of his own forces as well. So we'll keep an eye on how much damage he can get done here. Of course, a couple couple of Ghost Academies ready to research some nuclear missiles. As you can see, one is just about prepared. In fact, I think there's already one. Yeah, there's already one up and running inside the main base here. So there is a possibility of some tactical nuclear weapon usage here from Hut. We'll keep an eye on his Ghost and see if he wants to go down that direction. Interestingly, I'm really surprised that ARze has not looked to take this base. And, well, okay, there you go. As I said, he does move over there and wants to pick that one up. So he will have a 5th base up and running very soon. Of course, you've got to be really careful when it comes to late game as a Protoss. You want to be very careful about your usage of Templar. They cost a lot of gas. You have to be very careful with how you utilize their storms. If you forget to switch them into Archons after they get EMP'd or something like that, it can really cost you, because that's a lot of gas that goes down the drain, and it is quite a lot of trouble to be able to deal with that kind of thing. So we can see right now that Hut is starting to really crank out the Ghost numbers here. We've got almost a total, wow, it's like 23 Ghosts around here for Hut. As I said before, he loves getting a huge count of those Ghosts out. So he's going to get a large contingent forward. We can see that his 5th base now nicely mining. As we can see, the 4th is, it's still going quite well. Unfortunately, his one of his turrets here is actually mispositioned, blocking off this mineral patch, at least from the front position there. So he will have a little bit of mining trouble with that, but not to worry. His 3rd base now starting to mine out. The natural, of course, is all but gone, and the main is all done as well. But as we can see, with ARze now starting to take his 5th base, he's going to look to really power up his forces as well. What I would love to see are some further upgrades here. The shield upgrade is really needed at this point. Like, I mean, Ghosts, of course, really negate shields in a way, but it's still helpful to have it just in case. You do, you know, like, he misses the EMPs, you're able to snipe out the Ghosts before they can lay down the EMPs or something like that. It's just really helpful to have that kind of thing available. Not to mention, as you look towards late game, where I really like to see air units start to come into effect, such as the Tempest. You can see also possibly even a switch over to Void Rays or something like that can be quite helpful. But as you can see, looks like Hut is going to push forward. Lots of Ghosts at the back. The Vikings will see how much they are able to protect these forces. The Ghosts actually in a little bit of a bad position. They're getting sniped out by quite a lot of the Colossus. The Stalkers now moving forwards. The Archons up, slowly getting taken apart. A Time Warp coming down right on top of the Ghosts there. Very, very nicely done by ARze, and it looks as if he is going to push his opponent back. The Stalkers blinking forwards and attacking their own Stalker there. I'm not sure how I feel about that one. But Hut has lost quite a few of his forces on the ground, but he still has a huge group of Ghosts there. We are going to see the nukes now coming up. They will launch across and head into that 5th base. So we'll see how much damage Hut can do here. It looks like the nukes are just not going to happen. However, that baited in the Colossus. They were pulled forwards, and now Hut is able to snipe them all down. So that means that ARze is down on his Colossus count. He's currently sitting at basically Stalkers. 24 Stalkers at this point is all that ARze has on the map. Of course, these guys very mobile, very adroit, if you will, able to move around with their with their blink, and then they've got their 3-3 of their upgrades here. They are going to blink forwards with some good micro. I'm pretty sure that ARze should be able to trade quite efficiently here. He decides to move back though as the Marauders moving forward, stem up. They've got their own 3-3 as well, keep in mind. So every single shot does quite a lot of damage to those Stalkers, but now ARze is able to get some more forces on the field. But I'm still kind of wondering, is there another robo here for ARze? He does actually have 3. Okay, cool. I was going to say I'm a little bit worried if he doesn't have extra robos. So he is starting to mine out at his 3rd base as well. His 4th is still sitting quite comfortably. Of course, the 5th has only just gone up, so he's all good in that regard. But Hut is now going to come through on the left-hand side of the map. It looks like he will finally get a drop in. This has been basically a game with no drops coming in from both players, because they've been extremely careful about blocking off these kinds of attacks. But now, while that drop is going on, we'll have a big fight in the middle. Basically, some very simple units from either player here. Just Marine Marauder Medevac against the Zealot and Stalker combination. ARze is going to blink forward, targeting down some of the Medevacs. Very nicely done to be able to remove some of those air forces from the skies there, and that removes quite a lot of control and opens up the switch back into Colossus here. As we can see from ARze, he is going to be able to bring those Colossus back on the field. He finally cleans up this attack. Well, it looks like he cleans up this attack. There you go. He finally does clean up that attack, but not before Hut is able to push back across, and once again, these guys just trading back and forth. The Marine Marauder combination is still doing a lot of work here for Hut. The Ghost is now continually coming out around about 3 at a time, because Hut is starting to struggle for his gas. This is where the latter sort of stages of a TVP really start to kick in, because if you're not very careful with the usage of your gas-intensive units, it can really come back to bite you. So Hut is, you really need to be careful with these Ghosts from now on. Of course, ARze is very similar. You've got to be careful with your Templar, with your Colossi as well. You've got to make sure that they're both being guarded correctly and that they're being switched over into Archons, as we mentioned before, that their Storms and feedbacks are being used efficiently, and that can really dictate how the mid and late game stages start to sort of traverse. So it looks as if ARze is now going to move forwards. A couple of Colossi. We'll keep an eye on the Viking count here for Hut. He's currently sitting at a total of none, but he's about to have 4 out on the field. Once those are out, that should be enough to force this big, great, massive units here from ARze back. However, not before losing quite a lot of his forces. The Ghosts, in fact, are being slaughtered by the Zealots there. Their side blades cutting through them, and the Storms are wonderful from ARze, tearing apart those medevacs up in the sky. And it looks like the medevac count has just been decimated, down to a total of 4. This could come back to bite Hut as we move through to the late game stages here. Of course, a lot of the time, Terran players are very efficient with their usage, and I suppose keeping their medevacs alive for as long as possible. When you start to see high medevac counts, that's when it gets really annoying trying to kill off a Terran player just because their units are constantly being healed up. But ARze now sniping down all the medevacs. This has forced Hut to build up some more medevacs here. He's investing gas in those medevacs. He's got gas coming into the Marauders as well. We've got no more Ghosts coming out from our Terran player, and ARze is starting to push forwards, and he's starting to capitalize on the fact that he is very much unhindered. He does need to be very careful about making sure that he still continues to bring out the power units, though. You cannot sit down on just the gateway units and, just sort of think that you can easily crush a Terran player. They will need to bring out the Storms, the Colossus as well. Of course, the feedbacks are really good for Ghosts if they start to come back with a vengeance here for Hut. But as we can see, he has no such thing coming about. He ain't afraid of no Ghosts at the moment. I tell you what, well, I suppose that's ARze for the moment. He ain't afraid of no Ghosts because he's got nothing to worry about. However, one is going to come out here from Hut. But ARze, I really would like to see him just hold up for a minute, maybe just take the pedal off the gas for a second, get a few Colossi together, and then start to push forwards. In fact, he does have 3 here now, with the Templar also up the back. He will be able to push forwards. A wonderful surround there from Hut. He's going to have to micro his heart out, though, because the Storms are just brilliant as well. Zealots now pushing forwards. The Marauders trying to target down some of the units as well, but they will not get too much done. The Time Warp excellently placed there by ARze, and it looks as if he will again just slowly start to eke a little bit of a lead out here. 141 supply for him, 126 for Hut. Of course, he is not out of it yet. This base across to the left-hand side, I have no idea how this is not being picked up by ARze. He needs to get over there and take that base down. Of course, there is a secondary base on the bottom right-hand side as well. I think ARze is just thinking that his opponent is, on these basically sort of 5 bases or like 2 mining bases, and that he can just push in here. Little does he know that he actually needs to clean up these extra bases on the side. He does finally find this one across on this side here, and I'm sure at this point ARze is going to be saying, oh, you've still got a lot of units. What's all that about? So he's going to have to be very careful about doing something about this, because he does need to get across and kill off not only this command center here, but if he can stop the mining at this base as well, then that pretty much puts him in the front running for winning this game. But, of course, if Hut is maybe sort of, like, I'm kind of wondering what he can do from here. If he can keep these bases up, then he can certainly stay in it. But this is the issue with dealing with Protoss late game, is that Archons are just ridiculous when you consider that they do their 47 damage against biological targets. It's a little bit of a splash as well. You've got your Colossus that also have their 21 damage times 2, which is also a splash. They just rip apart all sorts of units on the ground. And, without the capability, without the gas, and also the production to bring in extra Vikings and things like that, then Hut is going to start to struggle with dealing with the Colossus count if ARze decides to move into a higher Colossus number, which is normally what you would see here. And as I said before, I personally prefer to go up to Stargate Tech and get some Tempest out, but I think what ARze is doing here, just being very diligent, keeping the gateway unit count up. You need these zealots to tank, you need the stalkers to shoot down the Vikings as well. The Archons, not only for tanking, but for doing high amounts of damage as well. And this just means that as long as ARze is very careful and very patient, he can keep himself in the lead in this game. But he has now finally found this base, and he'll be saying, oh my god, that base has been there for a long time. Look at the minerals, it's almost mined out. He's going to warp in some zealots here, and they will come across and start to slowly pick apart these SCVs. Surely Hutt knows that the main force is moving across this site. Yes, he does. There's the scan. He knows that it's on the way across. He'll have to get across and try and do something about this. But if that base goes down, then I'm sure he knows he is in a very precarious position here. But he is deciding to hold up. We're going to get some more Vikings together. We're going to get more ghosts coming out now as well. The ghost count now back up to a total of 7. He's got a couple of nukes, perhaps a an excellent nuke, but one of those amazingly sick nukes that you kids see sometimes. If he gets one of those out there, perhaps he is able to salvage this, but it is going to be a tough ask here for our Terran player. He's slowly moving forwards. We'll probably see another scan, and the Ghosts will move forwards. Cloak up and then move forwards. That's what we'll see from them. But it looks as if, yep, there it is. Cloaks up, sees that there's no observer. Drop down a couple of EMPs right on top of the Tempest there. In fact, no, he goes for the snipe. Perhaps not the best idea. It looks as if there was an observer in the mix, and ARze is able to take a huge advantage there. 161 supply up against the 124 of Hutt, and Hutt again attempts to try and get some mining going at this base, but it is not going to happen. A DT and a Zealot say no, and Hutt, well, this is possibly his last battle here. He's got a huge amount of Vikings, although his opponent doesn't exactly have a large amount of Colossus, which is a little bit unfortunate for the Terran player Hutt here, but we'll see. He may be able to drop them down on the ground and help out with some of the DPS that will be needed against all of these Zealots, of course, or the Archons that are there as well. ARze now with his 313, these Zealots on the ground in particular are extremely tanky, so they're going to be able to soak up quite a lot of damage. Hutt now moving forwards. It looks like an SCV train is going to come across to that base. A DT and a Zealot will be able to block that off for the time being. A, wow, fleet of observers are here for ARze, and we're just making sure that he's got enough. The storms will come out. Not exactly the best storms, but they get the damage done regardless. Hutt decides to drop down the Vikings a little bit late, perhaps. The storm's now coming through. Excellent micro to try and keep some of the units alive, but I think it is just a little bit too late here for our Terran player. He's going to try and start a step backwards. DT's now also coming through. The Vikings will try and snipe down the observers, but there are just so many. A GG from Hutt, and that game is over. Hope you all enjoyed that one. What a crazy game between these two excellent players from the C region. Please feel free to jump onto their Twitter, say hello. Also, you can hop onto my Facebook page over at facebook.com/duckfield.casting. Say hello there, and I'll do my best to say hello back. Thank you for watching. Catch you all next time. Here, as you can see, 47 damage to bio units, and then the 34 damage against other standard targets. His storms have also been wonderful, just spreading them out across the battlefield, doing really nicely there. And for Minigun, he's been sticking with a much more